I'm Ed McDonald, and I'm with Tundra Music, and I also am running the Antique Vintage Guitar Roadshow and Auction. Our Vintage Guitar Show, which we put on for 12 years, is designed for people that have things. They're not really sure what they are. They're not sure what the values are. They might not know how to play them. They may have an inflated idea of what they're worth and be counting on that money that'll never come. Or by the same token, they might have something that's very valuable, and they were going to give it away or put it in the garbage. Today what we're doing is we have a number of people coming in with a variety of very interesting instruments, and we're going to give them a little bit of a background and a general idea of their value, and they may want to keep them and pass them on as family heirlooms, or they may want to come to terms with maybe parting with them at some point. There's people coming in that are looking at the fact they're getting 1.5% on their investment sitting in the bank, and then if they get between 20 and 40 or 50%, in the case of Sunburst Les Pauls, maybe as much as 100% in a year. Consequently, you get people that aren't even players playing a role. And then part of the nostalgic aspect too, for those guys that basically have gone through university, had to ditch their guitars because they needed to pay rent, and then got a nice job, and now they're shocked to see they're worth 10 times what they sold them for. But they realized that they were exposed to great quality, and so they'll pay the price. Well, on display what we have is a number of vintage instruments, a lot of Fender and Gibson, which are really the icons of the vintage worlds, but we also have a number of vintage Gibson acoustic and Martin guitars. Then we have some memorabilia-oriented instruments. We have a number of these plexiglass guitars created by Dan Armstrong, which was pretty innovative for the time. And we also have one from Eddie Van Halen, which was one of his actual guitars he played in one of his amplifiers, as well as Rick Nielsen from Cheap Trick. It's kind of cool because you take that guitar out, it'll turn yellow in the light. Fender Stratocasters sort of got off to a slow start in the 50s, and then they got some momentum, and then through the surfer years, if you will, guys like Hank Marvin used them and so on, made them quite famous in his idiom. And then when Jimi Hendrix came along, it just blew the whole thing into the utter stratosphere, if you'll pardon the almost play on words. And Jimmy's been dead since 1970, and he's still selling guitars for Fender as a result of his genius. In the case of Jimmy Page and Peter Green and Eric Clapton and Jeff Beck, they all went for these Les Paul guitars because Mike Bloomfield went over and did a tour in England, and everybody set down their Fenders, and when they came to America, they drove the prices up on those Les Pauls because everyone in the pawn shops in New York were going, all these English kids want to buy these old Les Pauls anyway, and up went the price. Well, those guitars were $250 back in 1959, but they go anywhere right now between $50,000 and $350,000 US. This little guitar here is a Fender Stratocaster, which is a slab board Strat, which is indicative of the models between 59 and early 62. And they have like a little thicker Brazilian rosewood fretboard. The ratio is a little flatter in the neck too. Stevie Ray really loved these guitars. It's a really famous sort of Stevie type guitar, and the pickups have a certain winding that has a really nice output. They sort of saturate slightly, so they sound really good. Especially through a Fender amp, you need a little more jam. But this is a beautiful one. The condition is very good. It's all original. Even has the marking in the back. Some guitars come with a marking which has the 60 pencil mark in the actual cavity. And also under the neck, if you take the 4 bolts off, you can look at the neck, and there's a neck date with a year as well. And this is the tremolo, of course. This is a famous tremolo sound. Hendrix really put that to use. There's some guys like Dick Dale, of course, that use those big, heavy-duty strings and encouraged Leo Fender to make the big Showman amplifier so he could have that extra bass sound. So he was really liking the guitar to have that really big, boomy tone, and he used that tremolo bar, too. And I think he felt, too, the heavier strings would help to keep this in tune better. Now, these guitars can vary. If they're refinished, of course, usually worth half of what it would be if it's all original. In this case, this is an extremely good condition guitar, and we'd be probably looking in the order of the $20,000 range at this point. Condition of guitar is a major factor. The more mint and perfect it is, there's always a market, regardless of the economy, for the best of the best. There will be a guy out there that will pay an extraordinary amount of money because it's less that one scratch that the other one had that he was looking at. What would probably constitute a vintage guitar? Usually, in my estimate, is something that's pre-65. Consider this, that most of the things built in the 50s, there's a similar ethic at the time, post-war era. And that's largely what you're buying. You're buying the guy who really cared about the plastic or the Bakelite that he made and the metal parts and the quality of the work. The pride aspect was something you couldn't convince everybody today to have that same sort of continuous sort of ethic, if you will. In the 60s, it was still there, but they got a little more corporate and figured out how to do it for a little bit less, make more profit. And then, of course, the 70s, and we've seen it. Trademarks, unfortunately, are becoming more transparent as time goes on, relative to what they were based on initially. I would say a lot of the people that are coming here today to show the guitars would probably be people that do have guitars in the closet and should be playing them. And many times we do make that recommendation. So why don't you play it, man? Well, I'm playing my acoustic guitar. And it's kind of a shame because, these are great instruments, a lot of them. They're just sort of not doing anything. So it's much better if you play them, Play it or pass it on. Take the money that's going to make you happy to do something else, Join a gym or, play golf or take a trip, But do something with it. Why let it rot? They're meant to be played.